I died on a Thursday. The rope felt coarse against my throat as they led me to the scaffold, rough hemp that scraped my skin with each stumbling step. Rain fell in sheets across London, turning the cobblestones slick with mud and refuse. The crowd that gathered to watch my death jeered and threw rotting vegetables. They believed I was a traitor, a spy who had sold England's secrets to foreign powers. They didn't know the truth. Only one man knew the truth, and he stood among the nobility section, his face carefully arranged into an expression of righteous satisfaction. Lord Sebastian Hale. My lover. My destroyer. Any last words, Mr. Grey? The executioner asked, his voice surprisingly gentle for a man whose profession was death. I looked directly at Sebastian, meeting those green eyes that had once gazed at me with something I'd foolishly believed was love. The dead remember, I said. And they don't forgive. Sebastian's expression didn't change, but I saw his fingers tighten on his walking stick. Then the floor dropped away and Oliver Gray ceased to exist. I woke gasping, my hands clawing at my throat, but there was no rope, no scaffold, no jeering crowd. Instead, I found myself in a modest bedroom I didn't recognize, morning light streaming through threadbare curtains. My body felt wrong. Too light, too weak. I stumbled to the small mirror on the wall and stared at an unfamiliar face. Sharp cheekbones, dark eyes, black hair that fell across my forehead. This wasn't Oliver Gray's face, but the memories were mine. Every moment of my previous life flooded back. The poetry readings where I'd first caught Sebastian's eye, the secret meetings in his townhouse, the promises whispered in the dark. The night he'd planted false documents in my room. The trial where he'd testified against me, his face a mask of betrayal and sorrow. Lucien. Are you awake? A woman's voice called from downstairs. You'll be late for your first day. Lucien. The name felt foreign on my tongue, but information filtered into my consciousness like water through cloth. This body belonged to Lucien Crow, a young man of 22 who'd secured a position as personal secretary to Lord Sebastian Hale. I laughed then, a sound edged with something dark and hungry. Fate had given me more than a second chance. It had given me the perfect weapon. Hale Manor loomed before me like a Gothic cathedral, all gray stone and sharp spires piercing the overcast sky. I'd been here before in my previous life, though never through the front door. Sebastian had always insisted on discretion, meeting me in rented rooms and secluded gardens. The butler, Mr. Ashford, escorted me through marble halls adorned with portraits of stern-faced ancestors. Lord Sebastian is in his study. He's most particular about punctuality, Mr. Crow. I shall endeavor not to disappoint, I replied smoothly when the study door opened. My heart, this new, unfamiliar heart, stuttered in my chest. Sebastian stood by the window, his profile limned in morning light. He was just as beautiful as I remembered, with his golden hair and aristocratic features. But now I saw past the beauty to the calculation in his eyes, the cruelty in the set of his mouth. Mr. Crow. He turned, extending his hand. Welcome to Hale Manor. I took his hand, felt the warmth of his skin and smiled. Thank you, my lord. I'm honored by the opportunity. His grip was firm, assessing. Your references were impeccable. I trust you'll prove worthy of them. I promise you, Lord Hale, I said, holding his gaze, I will give you exactly what you deserve. Something flickered in his expression, confusion perhaps at the intensity of my words. But he merely nodded and released my hand. Excellent. Let me show you to your duties. I'd been working at Hale Manor for 3 weeks when I met Nathaniel. I was in the library, ostensibly organizing correspondence but actually searching for evidence of Sebastian's treacherous dealings, when I heard soft footsteps behind me. You're the new secretary. I turned to find a young man watching me from the doorway. He had Sebastian's green eyes but softer features, an artist's hands clutching a leather journal. Where Sebastian radiated calculated charm, this man seemed to exist in a gentler world. Lucien Crow, I said. And you must be Lord Nathaniel. Just Nathaniel, please. He moved into the library with quiet grace, running his fingers along the spines of books. Sebastian mentioned he'd hired someone new. You're younger than I expected. Old enough to be competent, I hope. Nathaniel smiled and it transformed his face. I wasn't criticizing. It's just, Sebastian usually prefers older men. More experienced. Easier to control. The words held an edge that surprised me. I studied him more carefully, noting the tension in his shoulders, the wariness in his eyes. You don't approve of your brother's management style? I don't approve of many things Sebastian does. Nathaniel pulled a book from the shelf. Poetry, I noticed. But as the younger son with no title and no fortune of my own, my approval is irrelevant. There was pain there, buried beneath careful neutrality. In my previous life I'd never met Nathaniel. Sebastian had kept his family carefully separate from our affair. Now I wondered what other secrets this house held. Poetry? I gestured to his book, his expression brightened. You read it? I used to write it, I admitted before I could stop myself. Used to. The words dried up. It wasn't entirely a lie. Oliver Gray's poetry had died with him on that scaffold. Perhaps they'll return someday. Nathaniel's eyes held understanding that seemed too deep, too knowing. Sometimes we have to die to our old selves before we can create again. I felt something crack in my chest, the first fissure in the armor I'd built around my resurrected heart. Sebastian announced his engagement to Lady Iris Ashworth at a grand ball 2 months into my employment. I stood among the servants, watching him present her to society with practiced charm. Lady Iris was beautiful in the way expensive things are beautiful. Perfectly arranged, coldly elegant, utterly lifeless. She smiled as Sebastian slipped a ring onto her finger, but her eyes remained distant, focused on something or someone beyond the glittering crowd. She doesn't love him, Nathaniel murmured beside me. I glanced at him, surprised. Do any of them marry for love? Some do. Some are lucky. His gaze followed mine to where Sebastian held court. But Iris, there's someone else. Someone she can't have. How do you know? Because I recognized the look in her eyes. The same one I see in my mirror. Before I could respond, Sebastian called for me. Crow. Fetch the Bordeaux from the cellar. We're celebrating. As I turned to go, Nathaniel caught my wrist. His touch sent electricity through my borrowed skin. Be careful, he whispered. Sebastian destroys beautiful things. It's his nature. Then it's fortunate, I replied, gently extracting my arm, that I'm not beautiful. But his eyes said otherwise, and something warm and dangerous unfurled in my chest. I found Lady Iris crying in the rose garden 3 days after the engagement ball. She sat on a stone bench, her elaborate hairstyle coming undone, tears streaming down her carefully painted face. My lady. I approached cautiously. May I assist you? She looked up, startled, then laughed bitterly. Unless you can change the laws of England and society itself, Mr. Crow, I doubt it. I sat beside her, propriety be damned. Try me. Perhaps it was the late hour, or the moonlight, or simply the desperate need to confess to someone, anyone. Lady Iris began to speak. There's a woman, she said. A pianist named Cecilia. We met at a concert 2 years ago and I've never felt anything like what I feel when I'm with her. When she plays, when she looks at me, when she touches my hand, it's like breathing for the first time. But society would never accept it. Society would destroy us both. She wiped her eyes with shaking hands. Sebastian knows. He caught us together at a garden party last month. He's agreed to keep our secret if I marry him and provide him with the social connections he needs. It's blackmail, Mr. Crow. Elegant, sophisticated blackmail. My hatred for Sebastian, already burning hot, flared into an inferno. What if I told you, I said carefully, that Sebastian has secrets of his own? Secrets that could ruin him if exposed. Iris's eyes sharpened. What kind of secrets? The treasonous kind. The kind that end with a rope around his neck. I met her gaze steadily. Help me prove it, and you'll be free to love whom you choose. She studied me for a long moment. Why would Sebastian's secretary want to destroy him? Because I'm not just his secretary. The confession felt like lancing a wound. In another life he loved me. And then he killed me. Nathaniel found me in Sebastian's study late one night, surrounded by ledgers and correspondence. I'd been systematically documenting every illegal transaction, every treasonous contact, every piece of evidence that proved Sebastian was selling military secrets to France. You're going to destroy him, aren't you? Nathaniel said softly. I didn't bother denying it. Yes. Good. I looked up, surprised. Nathaniel closed the door behind him and moved to stand beside the desk. In the candlelight, he looked like something from a painting, all shadows and golden highlights. Sebastian killed our father, Nathaniel said. Made it look like an accident. A fall from a horse. But I saw him tamper with the saddle the morning of the hunt. I was 16. No one believed me. Why would he? To inherit the title. To gain control of the estate. Nathaniel's voice was hollow. Our father was planning to disinherit him. He discovered Sebastian was embezzling from the family accounts. So Sebastian murdered him. I stood, moving around the desk to face him. Then help me. Help me bring him to justice. I will. Nathaniel's hand lifted, hesitating, then gently cupped my cheek. But I need to know something first. This vendetta of yours, what did Sebastian do to you? The touch of his hand made thought difficult. He framed me for treason. Had me executed. In my previous life I was someone else. Oliver Gray. I froze. How did you? I read your poetry. All of it. After they hanged you, I went to the bookshops and bought every volume I could find. Nathaniel's thumb traced my cheekbone. Your words haunted me. I used to lie awake wondering what kind of man could write with such pain and beauty. And now you're here, in a different body but with the same soul in your eyes. You believe me? I believe in souls that persist. I believe in justice deferred but not denied. I believe in second chances. His other hand came up to frame my face. And I believe I'm falling in love with a dead poet. When he kissed me it felt like resurrection. The kiss in Sebastian's study opened floodgates neither of us could close. Nathaniel became my co-conspirator, my confidant, my reason for wanting to survive beyond revenge. That we met in secret, stolen hours in the library, midnight encounters in the gardens, hurried embraces in empty corridors. Every touch felt like blasphemy and prayer combined. Tell me about Oliver Gray, Nathaniel whispered one night as we lay tangled together in his bed, moonlight painting silver across our skin. That I traced patterns on his chest, feeling his heartbeat steady beneath my palm. He was naive. He believed love could transcend class and circumstance. He thought Sebastian's pretty words meant something. And Lucien Crow? Lucien knows better. Lucien understands that love is a luxury for people who haven't been betrayed and murdered. But even as I said it, I was betraying my own words. Because what I felt for Nathaniel was absolutely, terrifyingly love. Nathaniel rolled to face me, his eyes serious. Oliver died. But you don't have to let Sebastian kill the parts of you that could still feel joy, still feel love. Nathaniel? He silenced me with a kiss, deep and demanding. I don't want your revenge to cost you your soul. Promise me that when this is over, there'll still be something left of you to love. I couldn't promise. But I could show him what I felt in the only language I had left. The press of lips, the slide of skin, the desperate joining of bodies in the dark. That we made love like it was both first and last time, like we were stealing something precious from fate itself. His hands mapped territories I'd forgotten existed, drew sounds from my throat I didn't know I could make. When he moved inside me, it felt like coming home to a place I'd never been. Afterward, breathless and tangled in sweat-damp sheets, he whispered against my temple, I'll help you destroy him. But then you have to promise me something. What? Promise you'll live. Really live. Not just exist for revenge but actually live. I turned in his arms, meeting his eyes. I promise. If you promise to be there when I do. Always, he said, and I chose to believe him. Lady Iris and Cecilia met in secret at a cottage on the edge of the Hale estate. Nathaniel had given me the location, suggesting they might prove useful allies. That I found them there one afternoon, and the scene stopped me in my tracks. Cecilia sat at a pianoforte, her fingers dancing across the keys, while Iris stood behind her, one hand on Cecilia's shoulder. The music was heartbreaking. Something original, I suspected, composed for an audience of one. When the piece ended, Iris bent and pressed a kiss to the crown of Cecilia's head. Beautiful, she whispered. Everything is beautiful when you're near, Cecilia replied. I cleared my throat, and they sprang apart like guilty children. Mr. Crow, Iris said, her face flushing. I didn't expect peace. I held up my hands. I'm not here to threaten you. I'm here because we need each other. Cecilia stood, moving protectively in front of Iris. She was lovely in an unconventional way, wild dark hair, paint-stained fingers, eyes that held both softness and steel. What do you want? Sebastian's downfall. And I suspect you want the same thing. Over tea and careful confessions we formed an alliance. Cecilia, it turned out, had her own reasons to hate Sebastian. He destroyed her brother's career and reputation when the young man had rejected his advances. He's a predator, Cecilia said, her hand tight around her teacup. He takes what he wants and destroys anyone who refuses him. Then we'll make him the prey, I replied. Iris leaned forward. I have access to his personal correspondence. Love letters, financial records, things he keeps locked in his private chambers. And I have contacts in the French diplomatic circles, Cecilia added. If Sebastian is selling secrets, I can trace where they're going. Nathaniel and I will handle the documentation and evidence gathering. I felt a warmth spreading through my chest, not just revenge anymore but something larger. Justice. Community. The kind of family forged in fire rather than blood. Iris reached across the table, taking Cecilia's hand openly for the first time in my presence. When this is over, she said, we're leaving England. Going somewhere we can be ourselves. Italy, Cecilia said softly. There's a villa in Tuscany. My aunt left it to me. We could live there, just us. The longing in their voices was so raw, so honest that I had to look away. You'll have your freedom, I promised. All of you will. It took 6 months to gather all the evidence we needed. 6 months of careful documentation, secret meetings, stolen documents, and dangerous games. 6 months of falling deeper in love with Nathaniel while planning his brother's destruction. The final piece came from an unexpected source, Sebastian's own diary, retrieved by Iris from his locked desk. In it, he'd documented everything: the murder of his father, the embezzlement, the treason, even his betrayal of Oliver Gray. The poet was becoming inconvenient. One entry read, too demanding, too visible. Better to eliminate him and profit from his removal. The French were most generous in exchange for those naval documents. 2 birds, 1 stone. Reading it, I felt Oliver Gray's rage burn through Lucien Crowe's careful control. Nathaniel found me in the library, shaking with fury, the diary open before me. We have enough, he said gently, taking the book from my trembling hands. It's time. The confrontation happened in Sebastian's study during one of his elaborate dinner parties. We'd planned it carefully, all the evidence compiled, copies sent to the authorities, witnesses positioned. Sebastian was laughing with his guests when Nathaniel and I entered, flanked by constables. What is the meaning of this? Sebastian demanded, his charm slipping to reveal the calculation beneath. It means, brother, Nathaniel said, his voice steady and cold, that your sins have finally caught up with you. As the constables arrested him, as evidence was presented and Sebastian's carefully constructed life crumbled, I watched his face transform from disbelief to rage to, finally, fear. You, he said, his eyes locking on mine. You're him. Somehow you're him. The dead remember, I replied, echoing the last words Oliver Gray had spoken. And we don't forgive. Sebastian's trial was swift and brutal. The evidence was overwhelming, his guilt undeniable. He tried to implicate others, to bargain and threaten, but no one would help him. The same society that had celebrated him turned with vicious speed. On the day of his execution, I chose not to attend. Let him die alone as he'd made Oliver Gray die. Instead, I stood in the gardens of Hale Manor, now Nathaniel's by right of inheritance, and watched the sun rise over England. It's done, Nathaniel said, joining me among the roses. It's done, I agreed. That he took my hand, lacing our fingers together. And now I don't know who I am. Not Oliver Gray anymore. Not really Lucien Crowe. Someone in between. Then choose, Nathaniel said simply. Choose who you want to be. Choose your own future. I turned to face him, this man who'd stood by me through darkness, who'd loved me despite knowing what I was capable of. I choose this. Us. The kiss was soft, full of promise rather than desperation. Behind us, I heard laughter. Iris and Cecilia had arrived, preparing for their journey to Italy. They'd invited us to visit once they were settled. Will we go? Nathaniel asked against my lips. Eventually. But first. I pulled back slightly, meeting his eyes. First, I want to live here. In this house. Transform it from a place of death and lies into something good. And write poetry again. And write poetry again. 1 year later, I published my first collection under my own name. Not Oliver Gray's, not Lucien Crowe's, but the name I'd chosen for myself. Lucien Gray. The dedication read, for Nathaniel, who taught me that love is not the enemy of justice, but its highest expression. And for all those who have loved in secret, may your next life be kinder. The book was a scandal and a sensation. Critics praised its raw honesty, its unflinching examination of class, desire, and revenge. Some suspected the truth, that the poet who'd been executed for treason had somehow returned, but no one could prove it. Iris and Cecilia sent word from Italy that they'd hosted a reading of my work in a villa overlooking the Mediterranean. You should see it here, Iris wrote. The light, the freedom, the joy of being ourselves without fear. Come visit. Bring Nathaniel. Let us show you what happiness looks like. We went that summer. The villa was everything they'd promised: terracotta tiles and climbing roses, music and laughter, 2 women building a life together without shame or secrecy. On our last night there, the 4 of us sat on the terrace watching stars bloom across the Italian sky. To second chances, Cecilia raised her glass. To love that persists beyond death, Iris added. To justice, Nathaniel said, his arm warm around my shoulders. To choosing life over revenge, I finished. To choosing love over hate. We drank and the wine tasted like freedom. Nathaniel and I transformed Hale Manor into something Sebastian would have despised. A sanctuary for artists, writers, and those who loved outside society's narrow boundaries. We hosted salons where ideas flowed as freely as wine, where people could be themselves without judgment. Sometimes late at night I still felt Oliver Gray stirring in my bones, his pain, his rage, his bitter understanding of how cruel the world could be. But I'd learned to balance that darkness with light, revenge with compassion, death with life. Nathaniel found me in the library one evening working on my next collection. He read over my shoulder, then kissed the top of my head. Still angry? He asked. Always, I admitted. But also grateful. Also hopeful. Also impossibly happy. Good, he said, pulling me to my feet and into his arms. Because I have plans for you that involve significantly less brooding and significantly more kissing. How scandalous. Terribly. The servants will gossip. Let them. We kissed there among the books, in the house that had once been my enemy's domain and was now our home. Outside rain began to fall, soft English rain that washed the world clean. I'd died and been reborn. I'd sought revenge and found love. I'd learned that justice and compassion weren't opposites but partners, that the best way to defeat darkness wasn't to become it but to create light so bright it left no room for shadows. Oliver Gray had died on a Thursday, betrayed and broken. But Lucian Gray lived on, loved fiercely and finally learned what it meant to be free.